So let's go ahead and start by opening up SketchUp. Now, I use a Mac, so a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about and say in this video is going to be related to Mac use. There might be a little bit different keystrokes and things like that on Windows computer. That's just something you'll have to play around with if you operate on Windows. Not to mention, I don't use a normal mouse. I am actually using a touchpad on my computer. So a lot of the things and gestures that I use are from the touchpad. So you'll just have to play around with the mouse settings as well, just to kind of get a feel for how things work. So as you guys can see, I use SketchUp Make 2017. This is a free download. So as you can see, SketchUp free. And there are a couple things that you can do right off the bat here on this welcome screen. You can choose your template of how you want to, I guess, start your project. You can do it in millimeters, feet, and inches. And I tend to work in inches, but if you want to work in millimeters, especially in the woodworking aspect, there is that option. So just select what kind of template that you want to use, and it will be defaulted every time you open SketchUp. So we're going to go ahead and start using it. Now, the big thing that you want to do every time that you open up SketchUp is you want to save your project right off the bat, because there are backup saves that SketchUp will do for you once you have a file saved for what you're working on, because there has been times whenever this program has shut down and I lost all my work. So just make sure that as soon as you open up this screen, save it, give it a name. So we're going to set up some of our preferences first. So go up to SketchUp and then Preferences at the top left-hand corner of your screen right here. And go through these things and see if there's anything that you want to change, correct, add, whatever. The main things that I want you to focus on in this area that you're going to use a lot are your shortcuts, and anything that is in this list you can assign a keystroke for. And as you can see, as I am scrolling, I do have keystrokes assigned to them over here on the right-hand side. Now, you're not going to probably use all of these unless you're really savvy with SketchUp. But find the things that are especially up in this toolbar that you see across the top of the screen and give it a keystroke, so that way you don't have to go up here and click, go over here and click. All you got to use is a keyboard keystroke and it will do the job for you. So find out what the names of these things are and then find them in this list and then give them a keystroke. Also, the template, if you decide that you didn't pick the right one, you can change that under Preferences here, and it'll change your template automatically for you. So those are the big two things that you want to pay attention to in that area. The other area that you can alter and change before you begin is this toolbar. And to do that, you just right-click in that toolbar and go to Customize. And it will bring up a whole bunch of tools that you can add to this toolbar. Now, you can go pretty nuts, but a lot of the things that I have in my toolbar are pretty default, and I've added just a few things that I know I use a lot of. So if you don't like something in this toolbar, which as you can see down here at the bottom, it mimics what's at the top. And you can drag those items up into this area, and you can drag items from the selection area into your toolbar. And it will populate it for you, and all you have to do is give it a keystroke when you're done. So play around with that, and you guys can see in my toolbar what all I use, and you can just copy that if you like to set yours up, because a lot of these tools I do use over and over again. Now let me just go through a couple of items that will kind of give you a better understanding of how SketchUp's going to work. Now, in order to make a project, we're going to first start with a couple of basics. And I'm going to just make a block of wood. And it's going to be 3/4 inch thick, and it's going to be 2 by 2 inches square. Now, you start off by making a rectangle. And up here at the top in the toolbar, you'll notice a rectangle. You can also do circles, polygons, and a rotated rectangle. Now, I use rectangle a lot, and like I said, there are some tools in here that I don't use just because I'm not super savvy with SketchUp. But I figured this would give you guys a good starting point. Now, if you'll notice these blue lines, green lines, and red lines, these are the planes that you can work in, and it will let you know what surface area you are working with in your project, and we'll discuss that a little bit further. Where these three intersect is called the origin, and that's generally where I like to start. So I'm going to select the rectangle at the top, put my cursor over origin, and then click and then drag. And as you can see, a rectangle is here. And now I'm not holding the mouse button. All I did was click, release, and start dragging around. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll notice there are some measurements that are kind of going nuts. And those are resembling the length and width of this rectangle. Now we can't establish height yet because it only works in a two-dimensional format until we push and pull it in the directions that we want. And you'll see that in just a minute. So let's make a 2 by 2 inch square. So while this is being drug around, all you got to do is on your keyboard type 2, comma 2. The comma separates the two measurements. Now if you notice, it's very, very small because we're pretty far away. To zoom in, all I'm doing on my touchpad is using two fingers and moving up on the touchpad, and it's zooming in close. Move it down and it goes away. So now we're zoomed in, and to better center it in your screen, up here there is a couple of red and blue circles called your orbit, and that allows you to pan around in a three-dimensional space. So by clicking on it, you'll be able to pan around, and if you hold your shift key, you can move it around, just to get you in a better dimensional space so you can orient yourself around your particular project that you are making. So what I'm going to do now is establish a thickness. And to do that, up here at the top, you'll notice a box with an arrow going up. That is your push and pull. This allows you to establish thicknesses or height of a particular rectangle or circle or whatever that you're making at the time. So we're going to push and pull by clicking there. And we're going to click on it and pull it up. And if you notice, there is a blue grid. Everywhere you see a blue grid, that's where it's going to push and pull. So I'm going to type in 0.75, which is 3/4 of an inch, or you could type in 3/4, and that's also acceptable in this. And then just hit enter, and it will automatically give you a 3/4 inch thick. If you want to verify that you did that correctly, you can come up here to your tape measure, click, and then go to one of the line edges and measure down. And then you can see it's 3/4 of an inch. You can also do the across to see if it's 2 inches, and across to see if it's 2 inches. Now, to get out of any function that you're using, if you don't want to use the tape measure anymore, or use the orbit anymore, or the line drawing, rectangle, whatever you're in, just hit escape, and it takes you out of that particular use of that tool. So, right now I'm in orbit again, just panning around, seeing everything is good. Now, the big thing that you want to do in SketchUp is create components. Components basically just make this particular shape stand all on its own, like a piece of wood in your project. So, in order to make a component, you have to highlight it. So you can click and drag and make a box all the way around it, or you can start from the bottom and go up, and you don't have to encompass the whole thing. It will highlight that way. See? Oops. I don't know why I did that. There we go. And it will highlight everything, and all the blue grid means it's completely highlighted. So all 6 faces should be blue. And if that's the case, you did it right. So to make a component, you go to Edit, Make Component, and it will give you this save screen. And you can give it a name, or you can leave it component number 1. You can say number 1. Just do whatever. We'll just call this block 1. Hit enter. So now this is saved as a component. And you'll know that it's saved as a component because if you double click it, it gives you this dotted line halo all the way around it. So now if there are any changes that we put on top of this piece, such as another rectangle, you'll notice that there are divider lines. Those divider lines mean that this rectangle or square is completely separate from this one. So if I click on my component I just made, you'll notice the new square that we made is completely grayed out. I can't do anything with that until I click into it. So to make changes on our component, you have to go into it by creating that dotted line halo. If you don't, it will just be highlighted blue like this, and you can't make changes to it. So components are kind of like a layer. In order to make changes to that layer, you have to peel it away or go into it. So when you hear me say go into your component, this is what I mean by clicking into it and creating this halo of dotted lines around it. So once you are inside your component, you can make changes to it. Now, you see a big difference here, how there's no divider line versus a divider line here. This portion that I just added is added to that component. So like I said, this is how you make changes. You go into the component, make sure that it's dotted around, and then make your changes, and you can edit anything that you want. You can push and pull areas that you messed up and make them level. And if you want to get rid of your lines, you can go to your eraser, which I have mine right here. And you can erase those lines by clicking and holding, and they go away. Now you'll notice this square is still grayed out, but it's now being encompassed by our component we've been messing with. So you can move that square, but it's wise to make it a component as well to make it easier to move. Because if I didn't, and I just highlighted one face and I moved it with the move tool, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, it basically does like a push and pull, but it can do it in any direction that you want. And sometimes it's difficult to move items if they are not made into a component. So does that make you sick? So the move tool allows you to move anything, and I've got it up here. It is this multi-directional arrow, and you can grab anywhere on this component and move it out of the way. You can grab it on a corner, and it allows you to snap it into place against other corners of other items. You can see that it's corner to corner now. You can grab this corner and snap it to that corner. Very, very simple to move things around if you grab at a reference point. Instead of grabbing out here in the middle of nowhere, it's very difficult to line something up. No matter what direction that you're in, it's very difficult to line things up unless you grab a reference of some kind. So, that is how to make components. That is how to edit components, and how to know if you saved a component. You can also join these together as a group. I'm going to make this a component, just give it a number 2. So let's say these are pieces of a drawer, and you want them to be together. You can highlight them both, and right-click, giving you your alternate menu, and you can make a group. This adds another layer into your components and basically locks them together as a group. So you can move them all together, or you can go into the group by clicking, and you can see this little halo around showing that this was made as a group, and it is a group of components, meaning we've got 2 components in here. So you can see I can click into this component and it gives me a separate little dotted halo aside from this one. Same for this, I can get a little dotted halo around the big dotted halo. So I'm going into the group by clicking into it like that. Now I'm inside, and I can edit either component that I choose by clicking into that component. I know it's a lot of jargon to talk about, but you'll get the hang of it as you start experimenting. So if you want to split that group up and you don't want them together anymore, you can just click on it once, right-click on it, bring up your alternate menu again, and just hit explode. And that takes the group function away, or the group layer away. So now you can move these independently from each other and they won't be joined. So that is how to make a group. And that comes in real handy when you are making projects, especially with things like drawers, doors, things of that nature, and you want to group them together so they can be pulled out to show, that they are a drawer, things of that nature. And as we go into our further lessons, you'll see what I'm talking about. So now that we got the basics out of the way and you've played around with it, let's go ahead and make a 5-board bench. Now I'm going to close out this one because I already have a 5-board bench made. So what we're going to do is this is actually a 6-board bench. And as you can see, it's pretty simple. Everything in this particular tutorial that I'm going to talk about is all butt jointed. Butt joining is very simple to kind of master in SketchUp. And in future lessons, we will talk about how to do dados, rabbets, grooves, dovetails, things of that nature. But for now, I don't want to confuse you to the point where you don't want to do this further. So let's start with butt joining. It'll be a lot easier. So I'm basically going to get rid of this. I'm going to highlight it all, and let's start from scratch. So that is completely deleted. I cannot get it back. So now I've got the origin right here. I want to click on rectangle, and now that I've got my keystrokes set up, rectangle is R on my keyboard. So you'll hear me refer to keystrokes and R and P and M, things of that nature, and I'll tell you what they're for. But we're going to make a rectangle, and we're going to establish the maximum width, length, and height of our project, and we're not to exceed those. So I always start with a block template that I know I need to stay within. So we're going to make this bench 12 inches wide. So I'm going to type in 12, comma, and we're going to make it 4 feet long, so 48. So that's 12 inches, comma, 48, if you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. And I'm going to hit enter. So now it has made a 12 by 48 rectangle. Now I want to push and pull that. So P on my keyboard is push and pull. And we're going to click and raise it up to 18 inches. Bottom right hand corner of the screen, you'll see 18. And that will signify an 18-inch height for this bench because the standard height for benches and chairs is 18 inches. So now I have a template, and I want to save this template as a component. So I'm going to either highlight it or triple click it to make every 6 sides highlight in blue. And then I'm going to press G on my keyboard for make a component. But if you don't have that keystroke made, go up to edit and make component right there. So I'm going to click G, and we're going to call this template 1. So now that that has been made into a component, you'll just triple click into it to verify that it is a component. It's got a dotted line all the way around, which is good. So these are the measurements that I cannot exceed. So the first thing we're going to do is start with our top. And the top is going to be on this plane. So we're going to do a rectangle function. I'm going to press R on my keyboard to get it to operate. Click on this corner and drag it all the way over to the adjacent opposite corner and click and release. Now grab your push and pull function, which is P on my keyboard, and we're going to push it down into the template because we can't exceed going up. And I'm going to type in 0.75, which is the thickness of the wood, and hit enter. Now it's made me a rectangle that's going into the template. Now we're going to click on top and make sure everything highlights. If you just click once or twice and not everything highlights, then click a third time. Generally, 2 clicks or 3 clicks will highlight everything. So once you have all the planes highlighted, then make it a component. G on my keyboard does that, so we'll call this bench top and hit enter. And I'm going to replace that because the bench that I made earlier that I deleted had some names already. So if you are making components and this pops up and it says to replace, it means you have used that name before. Now you can choose to replace it, or you can give it a new name. Maybe put like a 1 behind it, and that will change it. So I'm going to replace it because I know I have only one bench top now. Now, I've got the bench top. It is now a component, as you can see with the dotted lines around it. And I want to hide my template for now. So in order to hide things, you can do it under, I believe it's either Tools or Edits. There's a Hide and an Unhide. I have keystrokes for Hide is H, Unhide is U. So now I want to hide this, so I'm just going to click on that template and let it just highlight blue lines around it. I'm not going into it like that. I'm just clicking on it and hitting H. Now, I didn't delete it, it's just hidden. So I'm going to go to Orbit, which is up here, or O on my keyboard, and I'm going to pan up underneath the board and use 2 fingers to zoom in a little and hit Escape to get out of orbit. Now, I want my legs to be inset from the edge here about 6 inches. Now, the tape measure is the easiest way to do that. So it'll give you some reference lines to play with. So just start on the edge, click, and go 6. Just type that in, bottom right-hand corner there, and hit Enter. We're going to do the same thing over here, and do 6, and Enter. So now I've got reference lines. This is 6 inches from that edge, and this is 6 inches from that edge. That is where the leg will start, and it will go 3/4 or 0.75 in. And you can do that with this one too, 0.75. That gives you reference of the thickness of the board that's going to be in that spot. So without going into this component like that, just stay out of it. I want you to make a rectangle. So click R on your keyboard or rectangle at the top of your screen. Find the intersection of your reference lines and the component that we are working with. And you're going to click, drag to the opposite corner, and click again. So now we have made another rectangle that is not a component, but it is something we're going to edit. And we're going to push and pull. So do P on your keyboard to get this symbol. And you can see the highlight. It won't let you push and pull the component of the bench top, but this leg that we're working with is a brand new rectangle that we're going to work, so it is highlighted blue. So click and drag down. Now, a typical bench height, like I said, is 18 inches tall. We've already got 3/4 thickness for the bench top, so now we just need 17 1/4 to make up the difference. So this leg has to be 17 1/4. So as it's pulling, just type 17.25 and enter. Now to verify if we are within the parameters of our template, we're going to unhide our template and bring it back into view. So click U on your keyboard or Edit and Unhide all. So as you can see, our leg stops at the bottom of our template, so we know we are within the parameters of the template itself with our project we are working on. So let's hide the template again. Now we're going to make this leg a component real quick by highlighting it all, clicking on it several times, and click G on your keyboard or Edit and Component. And we're going to do this, make it leg 1. Now the leg is made a component, you can tell. And we want to make another leg over here. And you could, theoretically, make another rectangle, push and pull it down to the same as this one. But the easiest way is to copy your components. And you can copy just simply by making it blue, clicking on it once like that. Go to your Move tool, which is here. And then hovering over the point where the leg intersects the reference lines. And just click and start dragging. And you'll notice that component's moving. Now I said we wanted to copy it. So if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, it says Option equal Copy. In Mac, I have a button called Option. It's also a form of the Alt key on Windows. And I'm not sure if Alt is the copy function on Windows, but like I said, you'll have to experiment. You'll be told at the bottom of your screen what certain buttons do. So in order to copy, I just hit Option as I'm dragging. And we're moving it over down here, and we're going to hover right over that reference line. And it kind of snaps into place. And then you just drop it. Now, if I was to drag from a line over here, it's very difficult to snap it into that spot because the point you want to reference is where the corner is, because the corner is also going to intersect with these new reference lines. So like I said, remember to grab your components in an area that's easy to snap to other reference points. Now, that I have copied the leg, it's really easy to get a handle of how this is starting to look. So now we've got a top and 2 legs. Now, this is going to be a very basic tutorial, so I'm not worried about flipping things left, right, upside down, whatever. You'll figure that part out in some future lessons. Right now, we're just going to stick to basic making components and copy. So now that we've got 2 legs and a bench top, it's time to make the aprons. Now, unfortunately, we didn't leave ourselves room to put an apron in here because our template is maxed out front to back. So what we have to do is push and pull these legs inward about 3/4 of an inch to make room for our 3/4 inch thick apron. Now, because we copied the way we did, anything that we do to this leg will automatically be done to this leg. And you'll see what I mean. Whenever I go into this component, and you can see the dotted lines around, you'll notice that this leg is also highlighted blue, which is telling me that these two are tied together. So if I push and pull this side of the leg, you'll see that it affects the other component as well. And this is a huge time saver for you. So we want to push and pull it in 0.75 inches. And that gave us a 0.75 margin right there. So let's pan over using the orbit tool to the other side. Push and pull again. And type in 0.75, enter. So now we have margins on both sides of the legs to give us room for an apron. So now we need to make another rectangle for another component that we need to make. So using the orbit tool, we're going to get into position. So we're going to just drag it. It doesn't matter where it goes. Just drag it and then type in 0.75 again. So now you can see I've got a reference line for my apron. So go to the rectangle tool. Hover over your point, click, drag all the way over to the opposite line, and click again. Now we've got another rectangle, as you can see with our push and pull function activated. You can see what we can grab and move. So push and pull that down 4 inches. Let's just make a 4-inch wide apron. All right, so now we've got our apron made. So let's make it a component by clicking into it and highlighting it. Click G for component, or edit and component. And we'll name it apron 1. And like I said, I had a component named that already that I got rid of. All right, so now we've got our apron made. Now we need to copy it just like we did the leg. So if you can remember, we're going to just leave it highlighted blue like this. I'm not going to go into it. Don't do that. Just highlight it. Go to your move tool. Find the corner that you need to reference to this point right here where you want to move it. You can't grab this one because you'll go too far. And it'll be overhanging and you'll have to fix it. So just grab this point. Grab it with your move tool. Hit Option as you're moving. And snap it to that point like that. Now we've got 2 aprons made. Wonderful. Now let's go ahead and add a shelf. Now we're going to get into position with our orbit tool again. And I want to make a shelf 6 inches up. So let's make a reference line with our tape measure, 6 inches up. And we can do 3/4 inch thick reference line there. And like I said, you're just typing this stuff in as you're dragging. Very simple. Go to your rectangle tool now. And we're going to make a brand new one. So hover over that point and drag after you clicked. And then click and release. Push and pull, P on your keyboard. And highlight that area and then click. It'll drag out. Now, here's a cool part about snapping. As I'm dragging to this other leg, I want it to snap to the interior portion of the leg, not the exterior. And all you have to do that, you don't have to see the other side of the leg to know this. All you have to know is the plane that it lies in. So what I mean by that is the interior portion of the leg is that line right there of the leg. You can see it snap into place when I hover over it. See? Now if I did the other line, you'll see it pop through the leg component. And I don't want that. It wouldn't be very sturdy. So we're going to move it back. And just click and release. Now with our orbit tool, you'll notice that it is snapped to that face of that leg. Very simple. So make the shelf a component now by highlighting it, clicking it several times. Hit G on your keyboard for component, and we'll call it shelf 1, and hit enter. So now we have a shelf, but with butt joinery, you guys know that you need a cleat underneath screwed to the side. So let's just make a simple cleat. Get ourselves back in position with the orbit tool. We're going to zoom in so we can see better. Grab your rectangle tool again, or actually let's do our tape measure first. From this point, which is the edge of the shelf, and let's click out of that so it's not highlighted. From the edge of the shelf down, let's just say we want a 1-inch wide cleat. So let's just drag down and type in 1, enter. Now our rectangle tool, hover over this point and go down to our reference point and click. Now this is going to be 3/4 of an inch thick, so push and pull out 0.75. I just type that in, hit enter. So now I have a 1-inch wide cleat, 3/4 of an inch thick underneath our shelf. So we need to make that cleat a component. G for component on your keyboard and type in cleat 1. And I'll replace that. So now I've got a component for the cleat and I need to copy it. So I'm going to put it on this reference point right here. I'm going to zoom out so we can see better, because when you move things, you've got to be able to see everything. So the move tool helps me move it. So click on that corner, pull across, hit option, it duplicates, drag it over to that point, and release. Okay, so there you go, a 6-board bench made in under 30 minutes, and you'll be able to make stuff like this very fast. One more thing that I want to show you guys is how to cut away areas using the line tool. So all these measurement lines that I've got here, I don't really need anymore. And I've got a keystroke to delete guidelines, but you can find it under Edit, Delete Guides. And it takes everything away. My keystroke to do that, if I bring them back, is Shift D. And it does the same thing. Okay? So aprons right here, you can see they have a really sharp point, and if people walk by that, they're going to get hurt because it may grab their shin. So let's make a chamfer, a 45-degree chamfer that starts at this corner and goes over 45 degrees and cuts that part away. So I want to change this component, so I have to go into it. And by going into it, you have to click it until the halo around it shows up. And as you can see, because we copied it the way we did, this one is also going to be affected. So whatever I do here, it happens here at the same time. Now it's only going to affect the end that I'm messing with. So if I cut this end, this is the only end that will get cut on the other. We'll have to go to this side and do the same thing. So to cut it away, we're going to use our line tool, and you'll find that up here where there's pencil is at. And you can do line, which is a straight line from point to point. And there's also freehand. Now, if you want to get fancy, go ahead and do freehand, but I don't recommend it unless you're really good. So we'll do just a straight line. Now, I want to hover over that particular point where it starts, and I want to draw 45 degrees. But how do you know what's 45 degrees? Well, we're going to need a guideline to tell us, and you can do that using this protractor right up here. Now, my keystroke for protractor is Shift P. And as you can see, it highlighted just there. So now I've got a protractor that I can play with. So you have to be careful how this is lying, because it will tell you what plane that you're in. And if I did it on the green, then it would be on the end of the bench, not the front. And the red is signifying the front. So I want to click on that point with the red showing. And I want to establish 0. So I'm just going to follow this line out here for a little bit and click. And now it will start giving me reference lines for different angles. Now you don't have to find the particular mark that's 45. You can just type in 45 and hit enter. So now we have established a 45-degree line. And as you can see, it did it on the other one as well, which is great. So I want to go back to my line tool, which is the L on my keyboard, or you can click the pencil. Hover right over that point, click, and drag all the way down to the reference line till it stops at that intersection, and click again. So now we've established a separation line on this apron. So basically pretend that's our saw blade line that just went through. And now we want this part removed. So to remove it, you push and pull it out of the way. Now I can click on push and pull and I can drag it out as far as I want like this, but it won't remove it if I do that. So just push and pull it back. And it will stop you when you can't go any further. I can't go any further because it's only 3/4 inch thick. But you can tell it, 3/4 by typing it in, or just do this, stop and click. And now that portion has been removed. We've created a chamfer on the apron. So we'll just do that exact same setup on this end. So protractor, hover over the line with the red, establish 0, click, type 45, enter. L on your keyboard for line, hover over the point, click, and click again. Push, pull, and take care of that as well. And now we have our completed bench. So I'm going to get out of that component by clicking out of it, getting rid of my lines by delete guides. And there you have it. A completed 5-board bench made completely on Sketchup. And you know your measurements. You can check those with the tape measure. I'll show you how to make cut lists in a future episode, but this will help you get started on how to play with SketchUp and design your products. This was just simple butt joinery, and our next episode will go into making joints like dados, rabbets, grooves, lock joints, dovetails, things like that to help improve this bench a little further. So we're going to keep using this as a standard in our next few episodes. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you have any questions, be sure and drop them down below in the comments section. And I guess I will see you guys on the next episode for how to make SketchUp easier for you. Lessons 101. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you later. Boom!